What's good, y'all? Welcome back to Take a Time Out. It's episode number 48, 48 of them. I'm here with actually my cousin. So my cousin Jordan, special guest, first time on. So yeah, he might be joining us for some NBA content, stuff like that. Strictly NBA, stuff like that. He's loves hoops and stuff like that. So yeah, we'll hop right into this week's episode. It's been a couple weeks since I've got to talk about the NBA myself. So it's a good opportunity to look back at some of the stuff that's happened in the last couple of weeks. So we'll start with a couple of top matchups. So top matchups that happened. We'll start, I guess, with Boston Denver. Uh, I'll start first real quick since it's my Boston Celtics. My biggest takeaways were Denver should be favored to win the chip. They're still not on FanDuel. They're not the favorite, which is pretty wild. And I put like in the final 6 minutes, to me, it looks like the Nuggets get the best shots in the league. I mean, in terms of, just finding the open dude and running the best plays, stuff like that. They just do all that in the final 6 minutes and they look crisper, they look better. So they should definitely be favored to win the NBA championship. And they're still not. So it's pretty crazy to me. Even as a Boston Celtics fan, it just doesn't really make sense that the reigning champs aren't favorites again. You got anything from that matchup, Jordan?
Yeah, I do. Honestly, man, I'm gonna probably double down on what you said. Jokic is him. That's just the truth. I mean, consensus, in my opinion, probably the best player in the league. Um, because he just has so many levels to his game. It's if you don't stop him when he's making a move to the basket or around the arc, he's gonna take the shot. If you double him, he's gonna find the open man. He loves that baseline cut from Aaron Gordon, man. It's always open. It's not even the fact that it's open. He'll throw the tough pass and Aaron Gordon will go and get it. He's
Mm.
always able to just find the open man. Um, whether it's a corner kick out, whether it's the guy, a pick and roll, KCP made his way out to the wing, but the defenders crashed down on him because it's crunch time buckets. You don't want him to get a free bucket with that
Yeah.
little unathletic fadeaway that he does,
Yeah.
or the hook shot. So then they crash. So then what? He kicks it out to them. Like they do get the best shots in the league because it's facilitated by the best player in the league, in my opinion. I think that there's a conversation to be had, of course, but I've been on the bandwagon that Joel Embiid should go ahead, mail that MVP trophy back to Jokic with an apology letter based off of last year because that should have never been Joel Embiid's MVP, and I stand on that. Jokic is just better. He shows up in big moments. Not that he's just better than Joel, but let me say that he's one of the better players in the league, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
In my opinion, better than Joel, but obviously tit for tat. Can always find the open shot, always makes the correct plays, can take the shot himself if he has to. He demands respect from any defense in the league. Your best defensive players, you got to put them on him, and the tools around him are utilized so well because if you have to make the Denver Nuggets beat you without Jokic, they can.
Yeah.
I mean, Jamal Murray's a bucket, borderline all star. Michael Porter Jr. Michael never swing the rock. Porter Jr.
Yeah.
He's when he's on, man, he's one of the best shooters in the league. I mean, it's just like that. He's surrounded with shooters. It's ideally what you would want around any of your facilitating stars. It's a team like that who's going to be able to just go and get you, any look and any shot, any look based
Hmm.
around your star player.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I didn't kind of hammer that point home enough. Like Jokic, I mean, like you talked about, best player in the league, stuff like that. He had this play against the Celtics in that final 6 minutes I was referring to, where it was not even close to being open. He throws this lob up to Aaron Gordon. It was like in the tightest window. He looked like an NFL quarterback the way he put that in there. Like it's ridiculous how he plays, man. Like it's so hard because I guess we'll hop in right. This is kind of a good segue into another matchup with the Nuggets versus the Lakers. The Lakers took this approach like we're gonna let Jokic get his this game. We're gonna like we're gonna do that thing where AD plays help defense and Rui plays on him like ISO with him. And if you're just gonna let Jokic get his, he's gonna finish with 40, 35, and still a triple double. So I mean, there's really no level to attack it. That's why they're should be the favorite when it comes to playoff basketball. That Jokic Murray pick and roll. I mean, there's nothing better. I mean, there's absolutely nothing better. Um, yeah, and AD showed up in that game. Still nothing to show because it's gonna be tough. If they were to play in the playoffs right now, I think it'd go just like last year. Close games, but it'd probably still be a sweep in my opinion. So it's crazy. You got anything on
I mean,
Nuggets Lakers?
yeah, to follow up with that, I mean, it just seems like, I mean, from the playoffs last year, obviously they swept the Lakers in the conference finals last year, but people called it a close sweep. No such thing as a close sweep, in my opinion.
Yeah,
You're swept. Unfortunately, that's just how it goes. Tit for tat as well, because it also always depends on the teams that are playing, yada yada. But Jokic is always a nightmare matchup for that team, man. I think it was just earlier this season. Anytime I think it was either their first or second game played, anytime AD was on Jokic, Jokic was giving him business. I mean, he was, taking him down, hook shot, make it, fade away, made it, take him out to the wing. He sprayed it in his face. Like, he just demand when AD is your best defensive player. I think I'll stand on that. By far the best defensive player on the Lakers. And he has to match up for that. It's not a good look because of that chance that Anthony Davis does shut Jokic down. Who's stopping Jamal Murray? Who's
right.
stopping, Michael Porter Jr.?
Yeah,
Who's preventing, the baseline plays from Aaron Gordon? Because Anthony Davis is your shot blocker. So
yeah,
when Aaron Gordon takes to the baseline and he throws that usually real tight pass always to the baseline, either it's a lob or it's just a regular pass, Aaron Gordon always scores on those buckets, always.
hmm
Even
hmm
when it's not the best looking opportunity, he's always scoring. But sorry, always making that play. It's one of his favorites. But I think in that game, what I'm looking at here, AD, 17 points, 11 rebounds, 38 minutes played. Rui Hachimura is what I wanted to touch on. So I remember in the playoffs last year, their answer for Jokic was to put Rui on him. They're
Yep.
like, maybe he can handle that. They went small because Rui's not a terrible defender. He's strong, so he's not just going to bully Rui all the way to the paint. But he's just
Right.
eating him alive on the facilitating side of things. If he's not going to score, he's still torching your team. There's just not an answer for him. That's
Yeah.
really what I'm trying to get at here. I mean, the Lakers even produced. I mean, it was 26 from Braun, 23 from Rui, 17 from AD. Austin Reeves had 19. D'Angelo Russell had 17. And I mean, Jokic still had 35, 10, and 7. Jamal
Yep.
Murray had 24, and Michael Porter Jr. had 25. I
Yep.
mean, they're just getting, like we said on the previous matchup, just the best looks in the league. It's honestly, it's not fair. It's
Yeah. It's a cheat code, man. It really is. I mean, um, yeah, I mean, like I talked about with the Boston Celtics, we'll go to them. Boston versus Phoenix happened. KD drops almost 50. Still not enough. And then it's just a good old classic. The Celtics are stacked. Like all the starters showed up. It was just an all around game. Everybody kind of scored in that game, and we looked really good. And once again, Tatum kind of gets the edge there on KD. That's been a big debate with me and my buddy Seth. He came on here a couple weeks back, and we had a good old fashioned debate about Tatum's not a top five player, and it got pretty personal. But I think I came out with a better argument. But it's basically between him and KD. And KD's been doing his thing this year, man. He really has. But in terms of team, what we're talking about the matchup itself here, I mean, Boston would probably sweep them in a 7 game series.
I mean, to follow up with that, I do think in totality the Celtics do have a better team. This game was also played without Devin Booker,
Yep.
and it was still, I mean, they lost by 10.
Yeah.
Your second scorer on the Suns were, I mean, sorry, your second best scorer on the Suns was Bradley Beal, who gave 25. Rare, speaking of which, rare Bradley Beal appearance
Yeah.
because he hasn't really been playing this season. KD gives you 45, 10 and 6. Tatum gives you 29, 10 and 7.
Yep.
So outside of the scoring category, it's around the same. Who I think is better, I can't really speak on that. You would have to, you know, possibly swap teams and see how do you think Jason Tatum would do with the Suns versus KD with the Celtics. And I think the only argument in that sense is that Jason Tatum plays a lot more defense right now than Kevin Durant does, but Kevin Durant's
Yeah.
also old, man. I mean,
Yeah.
Kevin Durant's best defensive years came with the Warriors, where I think he got second in DPOY, twice or something like that.
Hmm.
If I recollected, I mean, he's not really there to play defense anymore. Um,
No.
but I do think it was a good showing from the team. Everybody produced. Jason Tatum with 29, Jaylen Brown 27, Drew Holiday 15. It was just a all around performance. Sorry, the dogs are
Oh,
barking.
you're good, huh?
You still had, and even Luke Cornett off the bench, 14. That's another issue with the Suns, man. Their bench provides nothing. Bol
Hmm.
Bol gave you 13 in that game. Eric Gordon 0 in 29 minutes played. He was out there putting up fucking Tony Snell stats.
Yep.
So you
Yeah.
know it.
That's the real ugly part of the Suns team. I mean, we did a what we learned from every NBA team on actually our latest episode that we posted. And the thing that we said that we learned about the Suns this year is that we're never going to see them three guys healthy in the playoffs. And like you talked about, we've already seen Bradley Beal miss so much time. Like, I just feel like I'm never going to see a world where they're all three healthy. Maybe it will be the playoffs. I mean, I hope the best for them, but I mean, we just never see them guys on the floor at the same time. It's been like 4 or 5 games this season, so it's
Honestly,
ridiculous.
man, it's giving the same vibe as the Nets with
Hmm.
Kyrie,
Yeah.
James Harden, and KD.
Yep.
Uh, I think if they all do touch the floor together, it's going to be really hard to outscore that team. Most of the injury issues have mainly been Bradley Beal dealing with his back and then some form of ankle injury, if I remember correctly. I can't remember
Yeah.
off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
the showing is though that he can. I mean, he can score the rock when he's on the floor. He's still giving you 25 off barely playing in the season. You get 45 from pretty good efficiency from KD. The usual KD is probably the most efficient scorer of all time. If I had to put it that way,
Yeah.
his shot selection is always great. He's usually his field goal percentage is great. Things like that. But
Well,
no,
it's
I
ridiculous
am.
this year. He's shooting the best he's ever shot. Like he's shooting, I believe it's 43% from three and like high 50s for field goal. I mean, he is shooting the lights out this
He's
year. I mean,
he's
he's on the
always
level.
he's always taking those good shot selections. So like that's
Yeah.
not news to anybody. That's the KD special, and it has been since he's been in the league. He's just always taking good shot selections. One of the best scorers of the game's seen. But with the Celtics, man, it's just a better all around team. I still think that the Drew Holiday pickup, in my opinion, was a good pickup. I personally think that Marcus Smart was worth the sacrifice of what Drew Holiday can give you.
Hmm.
Um, Unfortunate for Marcus Smart, of course, but I think Drew Holiday provides more, better facilitator. He can pop off if he gets the opportunity to. He's a better scorer than Marcus Smart, in my opinion. And I just think it's worked out for them really well. And actually, the Celtics didn't even have Porzingis this game. And
Yeah.
Porzingis, I mean, he's been hooping. He
It's our
looks
X
great.
factor.
Yeah,
Hmm.
he looks great. What was it that Jason Tatum said? That's his Pau Gasol.
Yep.
That's that's the role that he's playing, man. He's talking about a revival. I mean, he looked good on the Wizards. But the Wizards, were sorry. So the question was like, oh, is he going to do that? Is he going to be productive for a team that already has other players being productive?
Right.
And I mean, I think it shows that yeah, he is.
Hmm. Yeah, that's our X factor, man. We got one more matchup, and that's the Bucks Clippers. Um, Doc Rivers versus his old team in the Clippers. Uh, I basically said if we got this as a finals matchup, I mean, it would be fun to see Dame and PG play at the biggest stage, with all their history and stuff like that. Dame hitting the shot over them and stuff like that. But the Clippers have absolutely no matchup for Giannis. I mean, Zubac ain't gonna get it done. Kawhi, as great of a defender as he is, I mean, he's not. Yeah, he's playing up to par of what he used to, but he's just not a good answer for Giannis. I mean, and then Dame in that game that I'm referring to has an absolute great game as well. So it would be an interesting finals matchup. It really would. And I think this two teams that when we talk about contenders, we made a tier list. They were in the contender part, maybe even title favorite type of situation. So I mean, it is a matchup that we could see down the road. I mean, it wouldn't probably get the people going as much as a Nuggets Celtics series would, but Still be a fun matchup.
I think that that series would be more interesting. But the thing about this game is that it was a 114 to what? Sorry, 124 to 117 outing. I was and the Clippers didn't have Westbrook, Kawhi, or Paul George. It was James
Yeah,
Harden, Terrence Mann, and Zubac
yeah,
carrying your offensive load, and they still only lost by 7.
yeah.
The thing with it is that D'Lo gives you 35 and Giannis gives you 34, but from after watching that game, they needed every point that those two were dumping into that game
Hmm.
because as this not as to the same extreme as the Suns, but the Bucks bench is sorry. I mean, Bobby Portis, of course, great player, great for the team, all that, but he's been consistently like a 10 and 10 guy, double double machine.
Yeah,
Off the bench though, who else? I mean,
they're literally
Pat
looking at
Connaughton.
Pat Connaughton and Jay Crowder. Them are
I
the two
guess
dudes that need to step up. They need them to step up.
I guess once Chris Middleton comes back completely,
Yeah,
um, you'll have. My guess is that you'll probably have Jay Crowder coming off the bench and Malik Beasley starting still. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure they would slot him into forward,
yeah.
but if that happens, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Norman Powell gave 26.
Yep.
Um, like I said, that was without Paul George, Kawhi, and Westbrook. It's hard to say how the matchup would go because I think that one, you need to get consistency from Dame. Dame has been good this season, but not the Dame, obviously, of Portland. But it's a
Mm-hmm.
change of scenery, different type of team. He's the B of this team. He's used to being an A. He's
Mm-hmm.
you know he's the second option. That's new for him. He's been the first option his whole career with obviously nothing to show for it,
Yeah,
in my
and
opinion.
he's going through a lot off the court as well. He's going through a divorce. Actually, a lot of people don't know that. Like he's dealing with a lot of stuff off the court as well. So for him to just doing what he's doing, I mean, at the age that he is, I mean, can't ask for much more. I mean, but the one quick thing is I'm thinking that the Heat. I mean, the way it's going right now, I'm thinking that they're a little glad that they didn't make that Dame Lillard trade since they'd have to mortgage half their future. So I'm
Yeah,
thinking that they're sitting pretty pretty with that one.
I think so too. And I was one of the people that actually advocated for D'Lo to go to the Heat because I was like, compare that with Jimmy Butler and Bam, and like, what are we talking about? We're gonna see what we get. But the Heat always somehow find a way to be relevant. Jimmy Butler's him, especially in the playoffs, one of the best playoff performers
Hmm.
probably ever. I mean, that sounds a little wild if you look at what he does during the season, but I mean, it's the truth. You get him in the playoffs, and I mean, he's a dub. Like he's
Yeah.
solo carrying. It's
Yep.
you know whatever. But back to the matchup at hand, I think if the Clippers have Paul George, even one of them, they don't even need all of them. You give them Paul George, you give them Kawhi or whatever. I think this is a different outcome for them. I
Mhm.
think that the James Harden trade is a dub, man. Most people were like, oh, there goes that team, yada yada yada. They basically said, give us like 10 games, and we'll see how it looks after that. And I
Mhm.
mean, they went on a run. They went on a nice little win streak. James Harden is fitting into the role well. He's not really forcing bad shots all the time. I guess I should put it that way. He still
Right.
shows streaks of that, James Harden that we know.
Yeah.
But I think that unlike with the 76ers, where I don't think he was on board with being the second option, I think that he's just come to terms with the fact that with the Clippers, I'm sure it was beat home to when they were, you know, looking to trade for him, that he needs to acclimate his game to play around Paul George and Kawhi Leonard.
Hmm.
Or
Yeah.
I mean, and they share the offensive load well. I mean, you have nights where James Harden pops off, or Paul George pops off, or Kawhi pops off. Occasionally, where Westbrook pops off, and Norman Powell. Like it seems like it's flowing in a way that people didn't think it was going to. James
Yeah.
Harden, contrary to popular belief by some people who know like the James Harden of Houston, he's a pretty good facilitator, man. He usually
Hmm.
finds good open shots. He still demands respect when he's still around the wing. That's still James Harden. It's not the James Harden obviously we knew, but it's still someone you have to respect on the offensive end. And I mean, he's always racking up assists, always racking up double digit assists. He's always finding the open man, always finding the open shot. And I think that that is what the Clippers needed. I think that Westbrook can provide that to a certain extent, but I don't think that he can provide it to the level that James Harden is providing it now.
Yeah.
I think a fully healthy Clippers squad, man, I really like those odds of they're capable of beating anybody in a 7-game series because it's kind of a matchup nightmare. Most defenders have one, maybe two great defenders.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
it's gonna be
you
crazy,
know,
man.
if all five are popping off, or you get six that have all found their shot, you have Norman Powell, Westbrook, Paul George, like they're all flowing. You have to pick one to stop and hope that the others just don't make their shots. It's just not going to work for that team because contrary to the playoff P, shit from the bubble where he played horrible and the bubble was really bad on his mental health. If you look at
Hmm.
his career playoff stats outside of that, he's a good playoff player, man. Like
Yeah,
that 1 year in the bubble really kind of cooked his legacy for whatever reason or another. He's still a good playoff performer. Like he's not a bum. You can't just not give him the ball in the
right.
playoffs. He's still going to go get you buckets. Like that's that. Then we know who Kawhi is in the playoffs. Always elevates his game. We know what he's capable of in the playoffs. It's more like Westbrook and Harden where you start to be like, you know, what can
Yeah,
they provide?
that's where
What
we can really question like that's the we'll have to see part of the Clippers is what they're gonna do in the playoffs. Because I mean, I saw Harden, he played against the 7-game series with the Celtics last year. Then Game 7, him and Embiid didn't show up. So like
both
it's
fraud
yeah,
playoff performers. They always have massive drop offs in the playoffs. I won't really get into that though, just because like it irks me because obviously they put up big sets in the regular season and then just fold like massive production drop offs when they get into the playoffs. But I
mm,
think with the Clippers, it's going to be a little different than the Sixers. I think that James Harden can still find a facilitating role in the playoffs where he's not going to be under pressure to make the type of shots that he would be as the first or second option. I
yeah,
think that, if he can still provide you, for example, this game, 13 points with 11 assists, that's going to be enough. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard are going to go get it. Like you know,
yeah,
they're like that. And time will tell. But I think the Clippers matchup wise to the Bucks, I think you're right. No one really slows Giannis down. They don't really have a big that can play defense on Giannis like that. They can take a page from the Heat's book and
throw the wall. Yeah,
throw the wall essentially. And I mean, you have a pretty good wall if your wall is Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and fucking Zubac.
yeah.
So sorry for cursing, but
Oh no, you're allowed,
you
you're
know,
allowed.
that's a pretty good wall, man. I would take that wall over most walls that people could put together in the league. You have Paul George, who's all time great defender. Kawhi Leonard, all time great defender. And then I mean, Zubac's a body, so
Yeah,
decent defender. If you really wanted to, you could throw Mason Plumlee in there. Not that you want them both on the same, on the court at the same time, but if you really wanted to, you could try that. I just think that they have a lot of options. And I mean,
hmm,
Giannis isn't going to beat the Clippers by himself, I don't think. So, sure, I mean, let Giannis do whatever he does. You know, guard him one on one, just shut Dame and whoever the second option is going to be out at that point. Because right now, Chris Middleton is still not looking like he's going to bounce back anytime soon. The times he has
yeah,
been on the court, it's looked a little suspect, which is unfortunate because great player, could put the ball in the basket, but and a good defender, by the way. That people don't really talk
yeah,
about that with Chris Middleton, but Chris Middleton would sit down and
yeah.
he'd
He
make
was,
you beat him off the dribble. He would sit.
hmm,
So I mean, and you could argue, oh, Jay Crowder's a pretty good defender. Brooke Lopez was second in defensive player of the year last year, if I remember correctly.
yep.
Right behind Marcus Smart. Sure, but I don't know. I think that the Giannis matchup for the team is bad, but I think the rest of the Bucks matchup for the Clippers is bad for the Bucks, if that makes sense. I
Oh,
mean,
it
we know
definitely does.
D'Lo can do it, but the question is D'Lo's inconsistencies right now. He'll look good some nights and then he'll look terrible other nights, and I'm sure it's due to off the court issues, whatever else. But I mean,
Yeah,
it has to be called into question. I mean, it is what it is. Also, the bench for the Clippers is better than the Bucks bench, in my opinion. You have
hmm,
Norman Powell, Bones Highland coming off the bench. Mason Plumlee can be productive sometimes, and then you have Daniel Tice.
yep.
Um, No, I think that all in all, this Clippers team turned out pretty well versus what other people thought it was going to. I think the trade resulted well. I think it was positive for the Clippers overall. People were like, "Oh, there goes the team." You know, James Harden's going to ruin that team too. Yada
Yeah,
yada yada. But I think that he's taken a liking to the fact that he's back at home and that he knows who his one and two are. He's the third option,
yeah,
and that's just something that he has to respect. Or if they don't, then as time has shown, I think the people are starting to adjust to the fact that we'll just bench him. We won't play him. Like
yep.
it is what it is.
Yeah, they got a great coach. They definitely won the coach matchup as well with Ty Lue versus Doc Rivers. Like Ty
I'm
Lue's won the
sorry.
championship,
I'm
and
just saying Doc Rivers is a fraud.
yeah, he is, bro.
I'm gonna just say it. He's holding on to that '08 ring.
He is.
He's holding on. Doc Rivers is fraudulent, and he has been. It's just been that way, man. I just don't think that he's that good of a coach. I think that
Yeah,
he's a good coach. He was good enough to coach the Celtics, you know, to the finals in '08 or whatever. But half of that's the team. Like you have
yeah.
a stacked Boston team. Like it's whatever. I won't go down that rabbit hole either. But
No,
Doc Rivers is fraudulent for
no.
sure.
To sum it up for me, I mean, he's a player's coach. He's not great with the X's and O's. I mean, when you think about all the X's and O's that he has dealt with and stuff like that, he doesn't deal with it well. And he did great with the Celtics because they had a kind of an X's and O's guys at point guard himself and Rondo. They had like Sam Cassell, stuff like that. So I mean, that all worked itself out, and he got a ring. I'm happy for him, but yeah, I don't know if he'll have a job next year. We'll see.
Yeah, I think
But
this is his last chance for sure. I think that this Bucks team, if he doesn't make it happen here, because he's been given great teams. You give
mhm.
half the good coaches these same teams, and I
Yeah,
think that they make something shake. But he had a Clippers team, two Clippers team. Like he had Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, CP3. He had them with Redick
hmm
and obviously Redick and company. And then he also got to touch on the Kawhi Leonard, Paul George teams too. He's
yep,
just fraudulent. I mean, it's just one of those things where somehow his methods don't translate to the playoffs. I don't know what it is. I think that you're right. He's kind of a player's coach because I mean you saw the recent interviews come out recently where even some of the players are like, man, we hated playing
yeah,
with him.
right,
He's you know
yeah,
whatever.
hmm
But I just think he's a fraud personally. I think that I don't know. Maybe you give Budenholzer one more chance with Damian Lillard on that team,
yeah,
but it is what it is. He's gone now. Whatever else.
yeah. All right, well, let's get into the bulk of the episode here. This won't be too long, but I came up with a little idea. So every year, NBA draft time, every player gets a comparison. Everybody gets a comparison on what they think they'll turn out to. So I'm going to go through a couple of players. I mean, this is mostly from like the 2017 to 2022 range of players and what their comps were coming out of the draft. And we're going to talk about that, and then we're going to give what we think their new comparison should be, or if we like the comparison. If you like the comparison, then just say that, and we'll see how it goes, man. I mean, we're gonna start with a hot one here. We're gonna start with Ant Man himself, Anthony Edwards. Coming out of the draft, he was compared to the likes of Victor Oladipo. I'm gonna actually switch my comp here. I mean, obviously, because of how good of a player Anthony Edwards is, but I'm not gonna go the Michael Jordan route. I'm gonna go with Clyde Drexler. So a dude who battled it out with Michael Jordan and Clyde Drexler. If Michael Jordan was never a person, Clyde Drexler would probably have a couple rings and he would be talked about completely differently. Clyde Drexler is slept on, dude, not only in 2K, but in real life as well. Like the dude was a baller and has a lot of that athleticism in his game and stuff like that. The smoothness, the touch ups that he does at the rim, all that stuff was in Clyde Drexler's game. The little jellies, all that stuff. So that's my comp.
I do agree with you. I think that Clyde Drexler gets a lot of disrespect. I think that the whole "we're done with the '90s" thing, most people are trolling with it or whatever. Um, a lot of people when they talk about because it is really hard to divvy up eras, and like Kenny said, King of the Fourth Quarter,
Yeah.
in a video recently, he talked about this. And he was like, it's crazy because no other sport shits on the prior eras like basketball does, and it stems from the Michael Jordan LeBron debate. And I agree with what he said. I mean, it's just one of those things that like pace is different. For example, I mean, this is a prime example of just eras being different. We knew that Larry Bird was lights out. All of Larry Bird's peers knew he was lights out. Draymond Green just passed him for total career threes.
Yeah.
Draymond Green shoots like he has a backpack on.
Right.
Draymond Green is not a shooter. He's never been a shooter. But I saw somebody not too long ago talk about, see, this is what I mean. It's about the 3-point era and what this is now. Defense is not at the best that it's been with the league, right? So, sorry, I'm not going to spiral down that hole, but it's discrediting great players like the Clyde Drexlers, the David Robinsons, the Hakeems, just like, oh man, they played against electricians, they played against milkmen. The hand checking rule was, I mean, very vital to how people scored. I mean, the hand checking quite literally let you, if someone tried to blow past you, you were able to use your hand to stop their momentum. They blow by you after that, that's whatever. But most people aren't doing that. That's just one of those things that they were allowed to do that. You can't do that now. You can't even come close to doing that. Sometimes you can't even look in the defender's direction because I think that officiating is pretty ass. I think it's at an all-time probably low for officiating, but
absolutely.
As far as we're at an all-time high for scoring and pace, like wasn't it just a few years ago? I think I saw a stat on ESPN where they referenced the total amount of threes that the 2016-2017 Warriors took would be like 26th in the league or 24th in the league this season, which is insane because obviously everyone was like, oh, they're revolutionizing the game. That was literally what I said, 2016. That was 8 years ago now, which kind of flew by. But anyway, sorry to backtrack to it. I think that Clyde does not get the respect he deserves. I think partial to that is obviously Michael. He was one of the people in Michael Jordan's shadow, but on top of that, I believe that it also stems from the this growing trend of like, oh, everybody pre-2000s was a bum, even though most of your favorite players played through the 90s to get to the 2000s and played it like that, like Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Ray Allen, people, that I'm sure in a few years people will be like, oh, they're sorry. That's just the way basketball trends, which is kind of sad because you don't see that with NFL. But I'm going to stick with, yeah, for sure. I'm going to stick with the Kevin Garnett take, and I'm just going to say I'm going to stick with the young MJ comparison. I mean, it's in the game, man. This kid floats when he plays the game. He's, when he's motivated, he gets any shot he wants. When he locks in, there's not a lot you can do to stop him. Just the other night, that block of him hitting his head on the rim, I had to put that into perspective for somebody because they were like, oh, people's heads go towards the rim all the time. Like, you don't understand that he was still going up when he hit his head on the rim. He got the game-winning block and smoked his head on the rim. It wasn't like, oh, he grazed it. Oh, his head was at the rim. He drilled his head into the rim.
He would have even went higher.
He was floating. Like it's identical to something like a young MJ would do because obviously young MJ didn't really have a jump shot. He had a midi, a fadeaway. You know this. But he could get to the basket, get any shot he wanted. And if you were down there, he's going to dunk on you. We've seen that time and time again Ant-Man. He does the same thing. He's shown that he's able to climb the trees, man, and slam that shit home. Like it's just very reminiscent if you go back and watch old clips of a young MJ.
Yeah, I definitely can't hate on the comp, man. I definitely can't. Another player from that draft class, Obi Toppin. It's gonna be hard to believe this one, man. I mean, my man was compared to Amari Stoudemire, one of the just a great player, man. So we're gonna have to definitely change this one for me, man. I mean, I'm gonna go with a different one. So a lot of people might not even know who this player is, but I know it because I grew up in Ohio. So I grew up watching the Cavs and stuff like that. They were on TV all the time. Jamario Moon. I don't know if you remember that guy. He was actually turned into a globetrotter, but just a dunker. I mean, this year we've seen a lot of Obi Toppin make some threes and stuff like that, but basically just a role player, name it. And that's probably Obi Toppin now, a role player that can really fly. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty good comp because, I mean, has he lived up to all the high aspirations of Amari Stoudemire? No, but he's still a decent role player.
I don't even think he's lived up to the expectations set to him by Knicks fans.
Yeah,
I think that maybe you could say the lights were too bright in New York. I just don't know that it. I just don't think it was in his game to ever be an Amari Stoudemire. I mean, he's athletic, he's shooting the ball now. Honestly, I don't watch a lot of Obi Toppin. I don't really know what his defense is looking like.
yeah,
Uh, I'm assuming he's a decent defender.
he is.
Not
He is.
100% sure. I
Yeah,
mean, you could probably compare it. Like, he sounds like a 3-and-D guy. He sounds like maybe, not sounds like, sorry. If you're throwing the defense in there, he's athletic. He can shoot. It's sounding a lot like it's giving Robert Covington. I'm not going to lie to you.
ooh, that's a
That's
good
what's
one.
kind of coming to my head because it's just like Robert Covington. I mean, he was an athlete. Obviously, Obi Toppin's more athletic, but if you're producing, 3-and-D gameplay, I think the ideal 3-and-D guy for these past, like, feels like Robert Covington's been in the league for like 20 years. He always finds a spot on the team because he can always provide the same things. And
Mm.
it's 3-and-D. That's, people need that. That's what Jay Crowder's role is with a lot of places. Like 3-and-D, they need
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
So I would probably lean more towards that. And Amari Stoudemire comparison is pretty crazy. I'm not going to lie to you because it's
That's
just
the
like,
notes.
I don't know. I remember watching him in college and I'm like, I don't know about that.
Yeah,
But, hopefully he's, finds a stride in Indiana
yeah,
and, makes the most of it. If he turns the 3-and-D page, he'll probably be in the league for a long time and we'll see him for a while.
yeah. I think we definitely will. I think we definitely will. Another player that was also in that draft class, Tyrese Maxey. So coming out of the draft, he was compared to, which I don't hate this one, but I'm gonna change it. Kyle Lowry. I mean, young Kyle Lowry. I don't hate it, but I'm gonna go with some kind of spicy man. He has a lot of with his shiftiness, with his ball control, all that stuff. Maybe not as good of a ball handler, but still a great space creator. Kyrie Irving for me. Um, I think that he's Kyrie without the antics. Like the dude is just a great dude. Like I don't know if you've ever watched them documentaries that the NBA's been coming out with. I forget what they're called, but he was on one and he is a great dude and I love him. So, I mean, I'm going with Kyrie here. I think now that he's playing second fiddle to Embiid, we're really going to see it, especially next year, what this looks like. So,
Let me think real quick because I kind of like the Kyle Lowry comparison myself a little bit. I won't go as far to say Kyrie, but I think I would be willing to go as far as Damian Lillard in a comparison, if that makes sense. Because I mean, Damian Lillard was still shifty. Obviously, he doesn't have the Kyrie handle, but he has handles.
yeah,
That's not you know a stretch in my opinion.
right.
Um, I really like the Kyle Lowry comparison, man. I do.
It's a pretty good one.
Because Tyrese Maxey isn't like a crazy super athlete, but he's still gonna go get his buckets. Like
Hmm.
he's able to beat people up the dribble. He can shoot the ball. I think if we wanted to highball him, I would probably say D'Lo. But I think that Kyle Lowry comparison I think it's pretty smooth in the same ballpark, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I really thought about keeping that one, so I can't hate. Can't hate. Um, Desmond Bain, who's compared to Malcolm Brogdon. I think we can do a little better than that. I'm thinking JJ Redick with defense.
Desmond Bane's a tough one for me because it's just like he's for me he's a bucket getter, and I'm not sure how. My man has Tyrannosaurus Rex wingspan. He's
No,
not
it's ridiculous.
like his
Negative
wingspan
wingspan.
isn't massive, and he still plays pretty good defense. Man, it's interesting. I don't for some reason the comparison that keeps coming to mind for me. I don't know why is Joe Dumars. I don't know why, and I don't want to stand on that. So I mean, whatever.
Sugar as well.
Malcolm Brogdon, I I just don't think it's fair. I don't think it's not that it's an unfair comparison, but I just think that a few years later, looking at it, they're just not the same player.
No.
It's not the same style of game. Desmond Bane's going out and can almost give you, he's giving you like high 20s,
Hmm.
occasional 30 bomb here and there. He can go get you a bucket. Seems like he's a good second option. I'm not 100% sure what I would compare him to because I'm racking my brain right now just because that's the one I had trouble with earlier and I still just never came up with another one because he's just, oh, man,
Different. He's
It's
different
it's
though.
different because, like I said, short wingspan, but still able to sit down. I'm sure one will come to mind after this, and I'm gonna be like, damn, like that could have been the one.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know
you
why
can.
Joe Dumars is sticking my head so heavy though.
It's not
I'm not
horrible. It's really
100%
not
sure,
horrible. Yeah, like
but
I said. Yeah.
sorry, I'm.
No, you're good. If it comes back to you, we'll just keep going. If you got one that pops up,
I
um,
got you.
we'll do DeAndre Ayton. His
Um,
coming out, he was compared to Patrick Ewing. That's crazy. That is
that's
absolutely
insane.
absurd.
Insane work.
Yeah, that's just nuts. I mean, I was a big Ayton guy coming out of college. I remember making a bracket, watching a lot of DeAndre Ayton that March Madness year, and be like, Arizona's going to win it all. They have DeAndre Ayton, and then they get bounced in the second round. So it's been really since college a story like of his career of how it's going to go. I said a little worse. It's going to sound a little too high praise, but a little worse. I said DeMarcus Cousins.
That's pretty high praise. I don't think he has the drive, man. I
Nah,
think he's a bag chaser. I think that Phoenix jumped the gun by giving him that fat contract that they gave him just because he produces just enough, but he's I just don't think he has that dog in him, man. I'm just gonna be honest. I've always wanted to be high on DeAndre Ayton because I'm like he has the tools to be a good player, but it just doesn't seem like he wants it. It seems like he wants paid.
mm-hmm.
Um, he said like twice now that he would put the allegations like the no motor allegations to rest, and I mean they're not to rest. I can tell you that much.
Yeah, this was his year to show out and like put up stats and at least put up
Instead,
stats
we're
on a
talking
bad
about
team.
Anthony Simmons or
Yeah,
Anthony Simon
yeah,
Simmons,
Simons.
and even Jeremy Grant is a guy that people forget about, but still a bucket.
Yep.
We talk about those two. Um, Even I mean, we've talked about Scoot Henderson, but that was more of like a draft thing. He's disappointing, but that's a different subject for another time.
Yeah,
I think he'll translate, but just not yet. I think that the DeMarcus Cousins comparison is a little tough.
it is.
Um, because I mean he'll shoot the ball sometimes. That's another one too because I was like some of these players turned out like not bad, but they turned out worse than what we thought they were going to turn out into. So it's
Yeah,
hard to find.
I'll give you one. I think he's like maybe even like a Dollar Tree, like a Dollar Tree Patrick Ewing.
Dollar Tree Patrick Ewing. I
Yeah,
mean, he
shot
alters
blocker.
shots, man. He's a shot blocker, but like, what is his defense really besides blocking shots? Like,
Yeah,
um, I could probably see the Dollar Tree Patrick Ewing.
yeah,
Probably with a little more of a bag for
yeah.
offense because
Right.
DeAndre Ayton does have a bag. He just doesn't utilize it. I don't want to be a
Right.
DeAndre Ayton hater, so that's why I'm not trying to be like, oh, he's a bum because he's not
Right.
a bum.
Right.
I just feel like there's a better comparison out there, and this is another one that's kind of slipping my mind because like I know that there's a perfect guy for this,
Yeah.
and it's just not coming to mind as of right now for whatever reason or another. But I'll go with the Dollar Tree Patrick Ewing. Like I said, he has a bag. He could be a better player than what he is, but I just don't think he's driven to do it. I think he's demotivated. I think he's kind of a soft guy, which is fine.
Right.
But we saw him like crying on the bench,
Yeah.
all that. It just wasn't a good look for him, I don't think. So, he does better in Portland, though.
Yeah.
If
For
his
sure.
comparison comes to mind, I'll think of something.
All right. We're gonna get with a couple really good players here. So Luca, he was compared to James Harden coming out. Decent one. I'm gonna say James Harden on crack.
I like that comparison. I do. Especially probably the James Harden that we started seeing with the Sixers. Moreover, like so, Houston James Harden, of course, was scoring, somewhat facilitating, but we knew what he was doing. He was going to go out and get his shots for the most part when he was alone.
Hmm.
I like the comparison. I do because just like James Harden, he's not a super athlete. I mean,
No.
James Harden, in my opinion, more athletic than Luka. I don't think
Yep.
anyone would argue that. And
No.
Luka still gets every shot.
Hmm.
that he wants. He gets any shot he wants. He get any look that he wants, and he just sinks it. He's a decent a pretty good facilitator and a decent rebounder.
Yep.
If you look um at the comparisons between him and Bird, pretty identical stats in the facilitating and the rebounding selection. Of course, the scoring's a little higher.
Yeah.
I would probably say if you were to put Bird in a non-hand check, more space era, this is probably identical to something that we would maybe see. Obviously, some people are going to be like, what? No, he's a fucking thing of the past, yada, yada. I personally think that just like Magic Johnson and a few other players, that they would translate well into the league, especially with access to the type of workouts, the body health options that players have now. Like, for example, people are spending, LeBron, for example, spends like around $2 million on his body a year. Players back then weren't doing that. They were on the bench smoking a fucking cigar.
Like, Larry Bird himself, bro, after a game, he would just be chugging beers.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, that's just one of those where it's like, I think that the Larry Bird comparison holds true in the sense, obviously, Luka has the scoring. Luka's going to look better in that department. I think he's Larry Bird with space. It's a good way to put it. Like, the spacing in this league would benefit players like Larry, Reggie Miller, yada, yada. I like the James Harden comparison. I really like the Larry Bird comparison because I do think that the stats fall pretty identical outside of that scoring aspect of it. Also, Larry Bird, though, played a little better defense. Luka doesn't really play defense. That's not really his thing.
No.
So he's been working a little bit this season. He's been sitting down a little bit, but I don't think the James Harden comparison is bad. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. All right, another guy from that class, Trae Young, coming out compared to Mike Bibby.
I don't like that.
I don't like it either.
I don't like that. Mike Bibby? Yeah. Come on, man. Let me get young Steph. Let me just go ahead and just get a young. I like the young Steph comparison. I like the 2010, 2011 pre-dynasty Steph. I like that for Trae Young. The handles, man, the shot. We know what it is. Give me that early comparison. Mike Bibby. Like, that was a comparison that I was like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that one was horrible.
Young Steph also couldn't play defense. I would like that comparison better than Mike Bibby. And like I said, I'm sure there's probably another comparison that would suit him even more.
Yeah, I got Steve Nash. That was mine.
I will say that Trae was a way better facilitator than the young Steph. So Steve Nash probably isn't horrible. Steve Nash wasn't really a shot chucker, though. Efficient shooter. No. That's where it's like, I'm not 100% sure how I like it, but I would probably stick with the young Steph, just with obviously better facilitating. Because remember, he was supposed to take that leap at some point of being like a Steph Curry level shooter. He's just never taken that. The Hawks also don't have the capabilities of hiding his bad defense like the Warriors could for Steph. Trae Young doesn't play with a all NBA defender. Not one that's going to hide that flaw like Draymond, for example. Right. But I would probably stick with the young Steph comparison. I don't like the Mike Bibby one at all, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of other shot chucking guards, but I'm not. Maybe like a fucking Stephon Marbury.
Yeah. Let's go.
Like, you give a Stephon Marbury with Steve Nash's facilitating, and because Stephon Marbury was obviously a bucket. Bro was also shooting those shots. So no.
It's a good little mix for sure. Well, we only got a couple more, man, so we'll speed through them, man. Shea was compared to Sean Livingston. I want to definitely switch that one. I'm gonna go with Penny Hardaway. Just a little on the Sean Livingston one. I mean, Shea wasn't expected to be this good, so it kind of makes sense that they would give it somebody like that. A mid-range killer. That's what Shea is. Attacks the rim. So not horrible, but it was just a lot better. I like Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway, when he wasn't hurt, was a lot like Shea. A scorer, play some D. Like, I love me some Penny Hardaway, man. I got a lot of Penny Hardaway shoes, and that's one of my guys, so I'm going to go with him.
Yeah, there won't be much to talk about regarding that comparison because I agree. Shea, people weren't expecting Shea to be this. I mean, bro's averaging 30 a game. Like
Yeah,
he's not really getting the respect that he needs right now either. I think that people are just now starting to come on to it, but because he's not particularly flashy or anything like that, people don't really, people always kind of stray away from the less flashy players. The Sean Livingston one probably would have been a good comparison. It's second year in the league.
yeah,
Uh, but after that, I like the Penny Hardaway, big guard, long wingspan, doesn't take a ton of threes, can sit down on the defensive end, and anything from inside the 3-point line. He demands a ton of respect. He'll still
yeah,
shoot them, but
yeah,
anything inside of the 3-point line,
yeah.
you have to step up because he's going to sink the shit. He's going to go into the hole. He's going to
Hmm.
give you the business from the arc, like inside the arc. It's he
Yeah,
definitely that's a really good comparison. I like that.
yeah. Let's stick with it then. Just a couple more here. Mikal Bridges compared to Robert Covington. I put Bruce Bowen. I think he's more of a two than a one. I think we've learned that this year. Not a one. He's not going to be your number one option if you want to be good. Maybe a two or a three. So I'm going with a big scorer like Bruce Bowen who played defense. So not horrible.
I don't think that's a terrible comparison either. Um, Mikal Bridges defensively is it Rocco defense? I'm not 100% sure on that, but also Mikal Bridges can do more than kind of just shoot the three.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe coming in, I could see why that would be his comparison. I like the Bruce Bowen comparison, but Mikal Bridges can also go and get his own shot. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure Bruce Bowen's kind of, I don't know that he's going to get his own shot like that. But
Right.
I agree, though, that I don't think he'll be a number one on a team. I'm trying to think about the comparison that I probably like the best because he's lanky, man. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't like the Rocco, though. It's
mm-hmm.
pretty tough. Real quick.
Another guy who
I had
wasn't
it written
expected
down.
to be this good. So,
Yeah,
um,
he he ended up really showing out
yeah.
and definitely, I feel like I want to almost say Trevor Ariza.
Mm.
Um,
In his prime, yeah.
it is like a prime Trevor Ariza would probably be a good one. Trevor Ariza and Rocco were always kind of the same player to me. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
Trevor Ariza though,
Had a better
I think was a
prime.
little bit more, of a bucket getter. He wasn't
Yeah.
strictly 3-and-D.
Right.
So I think probably that's not a bad one. I think that the coverage is better than Trevor Ariza though. So it's like
Yeah. But you got to think about from
it's
this
hard to
too. Like
compare.
we're comparing. What I factored into my comparison was like in his best situation, he would be a lot like Bruce Bowen. Maybe not right now, where he's the number one option on the Nets. But put him back on the Suns, he'd look a lot like Bruce Bowen. You know what I'm saying? Because he'd be taking a lot less. Creating his own shot. It'd be a lot more 3-and-D. So, but a really good 3-and-D. Like we're talking about top of the line 3-and-Ds. So
It would be a. I agree. I do agree
yeah.
with that take.
All right. We'll make this one the last one because the rest of them are kind of real tough, and I didn't really come up with one. So my guy Jason Tatum was compared to Danny Granger coming out. Which if Danny Granger stayed healthy and like, I think he'd be pretty darn good. But I'm gonna go with Kobe Light.
Kobe Light.
Hmm.
Kobe Light. Hmm. I don't think that's a terrible take. Danny Granger was a bucket, of course. I think if he stays healthy, he probably would have remained a bucket. I almost want to lean towards a less efficient KD comparison for him, just because of the length, defensive capability.
That didn't
Kind of
cross
the
my
same when it
mind.
comes to
Yeah.
facilitating. I would probably say that he would garner more of, like I said, a less efficient KD because no one's going to be as efficient as KD. KD is generationally great at being efficient, giving you high points on high shots with high makes. It is what it is. Like it's super efficient.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to compare to it. I think I like the, like I said, least efficient KD just because Jason Tatum's a big guy, man. Hard to contest his shot. He's really high up there. Your best defenders are usually going to be smaller than him, so he's going to get
Yeah.
better looks. I think he's a better finisher than KD. KD's the better mid-range shooter.
Yeah.
And then if we're talking about where they would be at their best, KD with the Warriors, like I said, great defender. I think that Jason Tatum's there as a defender.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can sit down on your best player and get it done. It's going to make it a tough bucket if they get it. And if they don't get it, it was great defense. You
Yeah.
know? So I think that the Danny Granger comparison, I don't even see how that was a comparison to start, in my opinion.
Right.
But, you know, you said you didn't really want to touch on the last three. And I agree. Besides the Cam Reddish one, I think bro's Rocco, man. He's another 3-and-D guy. The Paul George comparison's tough because it's like, you know, Cam Reddish was basically the third best player on a Duke team that had Zion and RJ Barrett on it.
Yeah, his development got shot in the foot. Definitely.
It did. He went to a team where Trae Young was not going to be the guy to develop him. That's just one of those things where, I don't know. Now he's sitting on the Lakers as a 3-and-D guy. I mean, he's supposed to be taking 3-point shots. He's not really hitting them.
Yeah.
I think that still, though, when he was being a 3-and-D guy for Akira, when he was being a 3-and-D guy for the Hawks, I think that there were times where he looked like he had a good shot and could play good defense. So I think the 3-and-D mold for me, the standard Robert Covington, because like I said, 3-and-D guy, it's like that. Right. But I think that the Paul George comparison fell flat for sure. And then I also think the Markelle Fultz James Harden one is kind of wild too, in my opinion. But I don't think that Markelle Fultz ever showed that he was like James Harden. I don't know what attributes they were looking at here. I mean, he's a serviceable point guard now, but I don't see that. But outside of that, Jaden Ivey and Donovan Mitchell, I don't know. I don't know about that comparison either, in my opinion.
They're all rough. That's why I was like,
the Cam Reddish one, though, bro, I mean, that fell flat. The comparison fell flat. It hit the ground kind of hard. So
he's not even logging minutes right now for the Lakers.
No, exactly. I think he's out on injury right now, but I don't think he was getting much minutes anyway. I don't know, man. I might sound like a hater, but his development was shot. I agree with that. I agree that things like that happen. Like, for example, I think that right now Jordan Poole's growth is stunted due to the whole how his stint with the Warriors ended. I think that he doesn't look like he wants to play basketball. I think that he feels disrespected on how it was handled. His confidence is shot. We know that Jordan Poole could probably be in this league a 25-point per game shooter. He shows flashes still. It was just a couple nights ago. He had like 38 or something, 35 on really good 3-point shooting. He shows the flashes, but I think that players' mental states affect their game more than people like to give credit to. Paul George had that terrible showing in the bubble. People made fun of him for his mental health, and that, I mean, it does play into the game. Markelle Fultz couldn't shoot a basketball. One, his injury was crazy, but two, during that whole thing, his confidence was also shot because people were like, "Oh, he's fraudulent."
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't know. I think that players' health should probably get more. The mental health excuse and the mental health possibility should get should garner a little more respect, because
I definitely agree
that players, it happens, man. I mean, look at Russell Westbrook, prime example. The Lakers just wasn't a good fit for him, man. We thought that it was going to be. There's a lot of pressure that comes with playing with LeBron. Actually, me and my boy just the other day have said this, and whether it's going to be a hot take or not, whatever. A lot of times, if you look back on LeBron's prior teammates, he makes mid players look good, and he makes some good players look not so great, depending on who the player is. A prime
one of the
example
hardest players to play with in the league.
Yeah, like, because you try to turn Westbrook into a corner shooter. Like, we knew that he couldn't shoot the three. I think, but though, on the upside, like when LeBron played with Mario Chalmers got a bag from the Grizzlies and got cut. Like, he
Yeah.
looked better than what he was. Like that's the LeBron effect, in my opinion. Makes
Yeah.
kind of mid players and bad players for other teams look good, gets their stock up, gets them paid. Then
Yeah.
you have instances of like I don't think he made K Love look bad, but
Right.
K Love's role changed completely.
Yeah.
He went from being the number one guy in Minnesota, having like a 25, 14, and 4 season to being relegated to a 3-point shooter. That's what happens. The numbers fall off.
Yep.
And he had to acclimate his game to that. But that's just what you have to do with LeBron. Like
Right.
that is what it is. Same thing with Chris Bosh. He was a hooper with the Raptors. Still was very productive and great for the Heat, but was relegated to. I mean, Chris Bosh started shooting threes. People joked on him for shooting threes there for a while because they were like,
Right.
"Oh, a big shooting threes," and now it's all we see. Like it is what it is. I think it's the LeBron effect. I think that Westbrook now is statistically, obviously, on the stat sheet, people are going to be like, "Oh, he averages the least amount of like what minutes, uh, points, rebounds, and assists since his rookie season." But the thing about it is that if you look at the advanced stats, he's playing the best defense he's played in a long time, jumping
Mm-hmm.
the lanes, things like that. I think it just happens like that. And I was hoping that the LeBron effect would take its place for Cam Reddish, and
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to. I think that they're in a hurry. They're kind of in a frenzy to get LeBron another ring, get
Yep.
them in more of a playoff spot. And
Yep.
I just don't think that he's going to get the development he needs there. So,
Yep. Just another situation for him, man. It's tough.
yeah, he'll probably get shipped off somewhere. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
so
That's all the comparisons I had, man. But another good episode. I had a lot of fun. That was a good one. But yeah, definitely check us out on socials. We'll have clips of this episode and the NFL episode that I'm posting in the coming weeks and stuff like that. So definitely check us out on socials, man. But another episode in the books. It was real, yo. Peace.